Hi, everybody. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk with you about Vedic astrology, how it affects, how the planets affect the world, and how it affects your life in general. I'm actually a little bit grateful it's dark outside today because I don't have to contend with sunlight pouring in, but I am probably going to have to rearrange um, my camera so it's not so much white in the background. I do have a new computer up and running. I just haven't downloaded the appropriate software yet to do this broadcast. So I apologize again for this um, quality, but we're working on it. Hopefully, by the next broadcast, I'll have everything downloaded and ready to go. Now, the um, the thing which is probably um, well, I won't say it's probably it's uppermost on my mind. I was going to say it's probably uppermost on your minds is the fact that there's a lunar eclipse happening on the 28th of October. Now, lunar eclipses are significant events. They're more easily seen. They're a little bit less frightening than solar eclipses. But since they're caused by Rahu, which is the North Lunar Node in Vedic astrology, they can be a cause for panic or concern or just a feeling of the walls closing in. Uh, I can tell you that essentially the best thing to do during eclipses is to stay inside and not do much of anything except meditate or maybe um, engage in some kind of prayer or engage in some kind of activity which is learning based. The reason I say that, I'm going to give an advertisement in a second, but the reason I'm going to say that is because um, eclipses tend to cause illusions about things. They tend to cause problems or disruptions. So we had the solar eclipse pretty close to the beginning of uh, the Israeli-Hamas conflict. Okay, and we're also seeing all kinds of what I would call bad information coming out of that particular conflict right now. Um, and I'm not pointing fingers at any particular group, but basically, um, there's um, there's a lack of care in how people are covering this. So I'm not going to get into all the gory details about that, but basically, we have had reports coming in which have since been proven to be false uh, from both sides of the conflict. And it's, so again, I, I resolutely, as I said last week, Israel has a right to defend itself. Uh, I don't think anybody who went through the September 11th attacks didn't feel the United States had a right to at least strike back, or or try to find the parties involved, or try to do something about that. Um, I think the problem comes in is that because this is an ongoing conflict, and people are essentially trying to cover themselves um, politically in terms of what's either fashionable in the case of supporting Hamas or unfashionable or prudent in the case of supporting Israel. By the way, I don't want anybody to think I think Hamas was justified in what they did. I certainly do not. Okay, but um, I think one of the things is that so we're getting quote unquote a really clear idea of where demarcation lines are being drawn um, across the world and across the country. I think this is one of the most fascinating things about this conflict. So I won't say anything more about that. I think this is going to um, clear up a lot. I think a lot of the misrepresentation and um, and shoddy reporting that's happened over the past few weeks will come under far closer scrutiny over the next month or so. By the way, if you do want to contact me for either a consultation or lessons, please call me at 508. Call or text me at 508 525 0001. Okay. All right. That's 508 525 0001. And you can also email me at garygomesg@gmail.com. Okay. Uh, so, um, so let, so I only want to touch on that briefly. Uh, I did look at a chart with a student of Iran's last week, and Iran's chart is fascinating because it has this sort of a underground presence, for lack of a better term, in the current sub-period it's going through. So it really doesn't look like it's interested in waging all-out war, but it will support, terrorist groups as it has been doing. And I think um, at least from what I can see, their involvement uh, will continue. They are not going to stop doing this anytime soon. But I also don't think the answer is blowing them into smithereens. Okay, that's kind of stupid, but that's just me. That's just this goofy astrologer in New Bedford, Mass. All right, so um, but I always look at all sides of the topic. Um, that's always been my trait, um, my tendency throughout ever since I've been a kid. Sometimes it served me well. Sometimes it's made me look like I'm waffling, but I think we have to waffle. Again, um, Israel has a right to defend itself. I'm not gonna equivocate on that. I don't know how extreme I would make that though. Okay. All right. So let's look, and also this is the eclipse map we're looking at. This is for October 28th next week, October 28th, 2023. The eclipse starts on the East Coast around 3:36 p.m. There's a This is interesting because it's not a very nice eclipse. Saturn's in the first house, so there'll be attempts at dictatorships or um, attempts at suppressing speech or um, suppressing wisdom or suppressing intelligence. Saturn's aspecting the eclipse point right here. So the Rahu moon point is the eclipse point. Is in Aries, and you will see some governments. do some shameful things, do some stupid things, and you'll also see active rebellion against governments going on over the next few months. Usually, eclipse points are deemed to last for about 9 months or so. That's the pessimistic outlook. I've never really cared for that particular outlook because there, that generally means there's never a time when we are free from eclipse influence, and that may be true. Rahu and Ketu are the most powerful. The lunar nodes are the most powerful thing in a chart. They represent unresolved karma or unresolved desires, and we're put, at least according to what I believe, we're put on this earth to resolve unresolved desires, either by sublimating them or by burning off the seeds that lead to the desire. Sometimes by fulfilling them. It's really tough to tell. You have to be a really sharp person to be able to tell that. And I think one of the problems we're also running into is the two planets connected with justice. As I said last week, Jupiter and Venus are under heavy affliction, and they will be for the next couple of months. So it's not like we're going to see like really strong or good resolution to this over the next couple of months to anything going on over the next couple of months. For those of you who have been following, and so the eclipse does represent an endpoint. I know I had one thought and then I replaced it with another, but I'll get back to it. The eclipse point. So I was going to talk about current political events in the United States, and I'll get back to that. But overall, what this tends to mean is a lot of some closure to some events that have been happening. Let's say with governments, like let's say the Sun, Mars, K2 Mercury combination. There's a lot of lying and misrepresentation going on right now. Tons. Okay. That much I can tell you pretty much without fear of a contradiction. A lot of it's happening in trade areas. It's a time which is ripe for people essentially stabbing other people in the back or making up their own stories or covering themselves to protect themselves. So we have a Mars-Mercury conjunction, which is a political combination. It's sort of like a necessity to be able to think quickly on your feet, to be a lawyer or a politician. And K2 can mean that people will make up things on their own. They'll essentially just say, well, this seemed like a good idea, so I'll either admit to it or I'll make up something you want to hear. Okay. And I think that's something we should be really, really mindful of as we're watching in the news right now, and as we're watching, especially any criminal proceedings going on right now. The two planets. So eclipses do mark conclusions of things, though, too. So that is an important thing to keep in mind. But basically, this particular combination is, I don't like this combination because it gives a good excuse to start wars or to start conflicts. So essentially, K2 Mars conjunction triggers tempers. People get really, really aggravated. when there's Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Mercury, K2 Mars conjunction. I was feeling it myself yesterday. And I think one of the things to keep in mind is, again, keep your cool. This is true for virtually every country in the world. Don't measured response is best. Okay. Obviously, there are situations in which you have to um, act quickly or lives are lost. Okay, so that's a different matter. But this combination is very volatile. It's very volatile for the markets. Okay, so there has been, I've seen reports in other countries, mainly in Europe, that consumer spending is going down. There have been some reports in the United States that consumer spending is going down. And a lot, this Saturn aspect in Venus, and then Venus moving into Virgo, well, by the end of the week, excuse me, should indicate some pessimism about trade. And that's probably to be expected. We've essentially, um, and again, as I've said before, I don't expect this to be a very deep recession, but I do expect it to be a little bit uh, troubling to people because it'll seem like because of because of Saturn's aspect, because of Saturn's presence in Aquarius, it'll seem long. It'll seem like it's um, interminable. So Saturn's in this particular sign aspecting the moon. It'll probably start in, I would say, after the eclipse comes. I mean, I think it's already started, to be honest with you, although obviously job numbers are, um, the unemployment rate is still good in the United States, but um, you can actually have, it's actually theoretically possible to have a recession and um, a demand for workers. Okay, because if you have an insufficiently large labor force or labor participation rate, there'll still be demand for workers, even if the economy seems to be slowing down. And there have been some layoffs across the United States um, in, in in significant companies. So I mean, obviously, we're going to see. We've already seen some layoffs in the entertainment business, um, partially because of the strike, partially because certain movies haven't done as well, or certain entertainment media have not done as well as they were thought to have done, or as they were expected to do, excuse me. But I think that's going to have a ripple effect in other parts of the economy, not necessarily that entertainment drives our entire economy, but as oil prices continue to rise and interest rates continue to rise to essentially tamp down inflation. I think that's um, that's going to be a problem for people. Now, the thing of it is, so just to give you like a simple, very oversimplified economics explanation, you can actually have high inflation. I went through a period in the 1970s. I was alive in the 1970s, and I wasn't a mature adult, but I was an adult in the 1970s, and we had a phenomenon called stagflation. And so low unemployment, it was high unemployment and high inflation. And what happened there were a variety of things causing that. Some of it was a massive entry of people into the labor force. So you had a lot of baby boomers graduating from college, a lot of women entering the workforce for the first time. And that doesn't mean I don't want to see women enter the workforce, but that does put increasing competition on jobs. And you also had rising gasoline prices. And they decided to fight this with a really brilliant strategy of raising interest rates, which essentially hurts the poorest people, basically. Um, and I think they're that's really the only solution they have right now. Um, the last recession was fought by lowering interest rates to the point where money was virtually free. You could get a loan for basically low or no interest. Um, this one, since you've been raising interest rates, and I did a paper when I was in my MBA program on Milton Friedman's analysis of the Great Depression. And Milton Friedman, I'm a Keynesian, so I believe in government interference in the economy. But Friedman made the point that interest rates were historically low before the Great Depression started, and the Fed decided to raise interest rates by half a point. And you're saying to yourself, well, that's not a lot. Well, interest rates were 1% uh, when they raised them by half a point. So essentially, what they did was they they increased interest rates by 50%, and they kept on raising them in the early years of the Great Depression. That will put a crimp on the money supply. Okay, so the money supply is a factor in inflation without getting into a boring economics lesson. So let's get some more. So this is my long-winded way of saying the recession we're expecting will come, but it will come in an unusual shape. So entertainment will probably be hit first, and then other sectors of the economy will follow suit. But there have been signs. There have been signs of weakening in the economy over the past couple of years, and so again, jobless rates may stay low. That's one positive thing, but it will certainly be a decline along certain sectors, and that's usually what happens in recessions. Not every sector is hit uh, as hard across, but tech sectors will be hit um, just from the Saturn retrograde, and also you may even see things like AI increasing or decreasing the need for technology experts. So I think this is going to be a fascinating time over the next couple of years. Also, media outlets will be hit, and they'll probably be hit. Um, I think they're already being hit. Some media outlets are already being hit, but they'll be hit in more strongly around mid-November, mid-October to mid-November. The other sector I would see right now, the other thing I would also encourage people to look at is, regardless of where you're seeing politically right now, um, the long-term outlook. So the long-term outlook is fairly conservative, and when I say that, unless there's a war that breaks out, so um, that's kind of a wild card, which I'm not confident to predict. I don't think there'll be a major war, but I also know it's very tough to defeat an incumbent president during a war. The last time that almost happened was when Lyndon Johnson was president. And we actually have a similar set of circumstances right now to when Lyndon Johnson was president, but they're not identical. Obviously, they're not identical. And I think one of the things to look for is look for shakeups in party leaderships over the next few months, and also, and this is around the world. This isn't just in the United States, and also for some more um, serious behavior, less disruptive behavior on the part of conservative elements in society, because Jupiter essentially is thought to be a liberal planet. It really isn't. It's much more of a traditionalist planet. So this Rahu combination with Jupiter has been essentially radicalizing conservative elements around the world. The Saturn aspect on Jupiter will make them vulnerable, but they'll recover after um, April of 2024. So I'm not sure whether that, or not that means conservative victories in the fall. That's not. I'm not projecting that yet. I'm too close to it right now to project that, but I'm thinking that there'll be kind of a shift over the next couple of years. One of the most fascinating things for me have been the recent Trump reversals between the eclipses, and uh, in the long in the long run, in the short run, they look very very bad. In the long run, I don't think it's going to change the eventual outcome. Okay, so I won't say what that eventual outcome will be because I haven't made up my mind yet. To be honest with you, am I going to be truthful with you? So it's always a good idea to step back and say, "Hey, wait a minute! I haven't analyzed this objectively enough. Let's see what's going on." But I find it really, really fascinating that Saturn's aspecting Scorpio. That tends to give kind of a backwards motion um, to um, intelligence. Saturn's aspecting Rahu, that'll give a backwards element to reform initiatives. Okay, so a lot of the increasing liberalization we're seeing in society is coming under attack, mainly because of business concerns. And I think, interestingly enough, you'll see a more conservative approach over the next year or so. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that a lot of the reforms that have been put in place right now will be gone. It just means that behavior will be less um, overtly radicalized on, on both ends of the political spectrum, on both sides of the political spectrum. All right, so let's get back to the chart. So, what does this mean for the moon? We did have earthquakes over the over the sun line for the last eclipse in California, um, and Saturn is aspecting Scorpio. So a lot of countries or a lot of leaders that have Scorpio rising signs or Scorpio suns will have some difficulty over the next couple of years, not months, years. Um, the other thing is Saturn is aspecting Leo, so a lot of Leo countries and Leo and Virgo people will have some difficulty, and Cancers will have some difficulty, and will have to exercise patience in getting results. So I think one of the things I can look at is, again, continued disruption to government, continued concern about trade or fear of disruption in trade, and maybe some big changes, especially economically, over the next couple of months. Okay. Um, this is especially true of Eastern United States, Brazil, Europe, um, and most of Europe. Okay, and also parts of Australasia. Okay, so let's go to the. So that was bigger than I wanted it to be, but that's all I feel comfortable doing. Let's look at the actual sun signs. Um, so the sun is debilitated right now. That means it's weak. So that means governments in general are weak, or they're going to be overcompensating by through displays of power. Okay. So for Aries, let's look at Aries. Let's look at your individual signs now. My apologies for taking so long to get to this. Um, Aries has the ruler of the first and the seventh. So that's going to open up arguments with spouse, arguments with children, arguments with relatives, and arguments with brothers. So you're going to have to be careful about family issues over the next couple of months, certainly over the next month with children. Less and spousal relationships, spouses will seem to be a little bit depressed or a little bit tired. And spouses maybe tend to lie or misrepresent themselves. It doesn't necessarily mean cheating in the conventional sense, um, but that is a possibility. Saturn's in the 11th house, good for gains, but only slow. Taurus. Taurus has um, Jupiter and the moon in the 12th house. So that means some disaffection or some separation from friends or brothers. Excuse me. And also, so both signs connected with siblings are afflicted in the 12th house. So it does indicate some cutting off or some communication problems with siblings and also some problems with losses, so expenses. Um, Venus is in the fourth house. So again, home life will be relatively fine, calm. Again, Taurus has to watch out for health issues. It's been one of those, it'll be easy for them to lapse into over drinking or overeating if they're not careful. And Saturn's in the 10th house, a lot of work for this sign. But we have a lot of activity in the 12th and the 6th house. So enemies pop up and jealousy pops up, and also losses and distance from friends. For Gemini, Gemini has Mercury's in the fifth house, aspects the 11th house. So again, problems with friendships. But I think one of the things is one good thing about this particular combination is ambitions, especially overseas ambitions, will be helpful to you. And also, with this plan in the fifth house, children will become a focus of your activity, and creative activities will be very strong. There is a tendency to get a little bit too concerned about love affairs or obsessive about love affairs with this combination, but it's also kind of a curious detachment from them. So it's a very creative time for Gemini. Saturn's in the ninth house, some difficulty making progress stick, especially in media activities, and Rahu moon. Again, don't trust friends, at least not for another couple of weeks, but you will have some more friendships coming in over the next few months. So that's a good thing. For Cancer, Cancer has um, a lot of planets in the 10th house, including the first house Lord. So this sign will be focused on and worried about career. Okay, so that's one very important thing to keep in mind about this coming week. And again, there'll be a lot of arguments at home and also arguments about relationships. And relationship partners will seem to be isolated or stubborn or hidden away. Now, there's a very important thing that I almost never discuss in when I do these lectures, and that is there are these things in Vedic astrology called major planetary periods or mahadashas. And based upon where your moon is at birth, you go through a certain period of being influenced by one planet or the other. Okay, so it's the sequence is usually, is usually Ketu, Venus, Sun, Moon, Mars, uh, Rahu, Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury, then back to Ketu again. And that covers 120 years. Okay. So people who are in moon major planetary periods or moon subperiods will be feeling a lot of victimization in relationship life. That's something that I can't tell unless I'm looking at your chart. And I did have a call from somebody this past week about a relationship pattern, really, um, not really uh, a cancer rising, but a relationship issue. But for a lot of people, especially people who have strong moons or prominently placed moons, relationship matters will be a very strong issue this coming these coming weeks and months. Venus is in the second house, so overall, this planet will do well financially, or this sign will do well financially. But again, a lot of arguments with relationship partners, a lot of detachment of relationship partners, and but some luck because career-wise, this sign will blossom a bit, especially over the next couple of weeks or so. For Leo, Venus is in the first house, aspecting Saturn, so the sign is normally happy. Leo is a normally happy, confident sign. Saturn in the seventh house does tend to give some unhappiness or disappointment in relationships, but it will also tie you with a good long-term relationship, even if the person's a bit older or a bit of a different age bracket than you. You know, it could be somebody a lot younger. Jupiter, Moon, Rahu are in the ninth house, so I probably wouldn't advise getting into a relationship right now. Sun, Mars, and Mercury and Ketu are in the third house, so there's a strong sexual drive when this combination occurs. Um, and there can be a certain carelessness about relationship life, and a certain willingness to give up one's independence to go into a relationship. If you're tempted to go in, at least wait for about another 3 weeks. Okay? For yeah, at the very least, for this sign, overall, good luck with career. Um, Career drive will be very strong, as will, excuse me, I'm sorry, as will money luck. For Virgo, Virgo has Sun, Mars, Mercury, Ketu in the second house. So people with this particular planetary placement will have a lot of arguments with people. They'll be kind of short-tempered. They'll be making up things in order to get their way. Venus is in the 12th house, so there's a strong desire to save money with this combination. So just be so this will encourage you to spend and even lie about spending, but this combination here gives a strong desire to save. So there's kind of a push um, to oh gosh, I'm just trying to think of a good way to put it. Look for deals that aren't really deals. So just be really careful shopping. Um, and Saturn's in the sixth house. Excuse me, that's good for overcoming enemies and for self-discipline. Saturn's aspecting the moon, so it's aspecting the house of gains. So that'll give some slow realization of gains, but they will come. And overall luck for this sign is relatively good because it actually gives success from overseas or success from far away. For Libra, Libra has a lot of planets interacting with it. Most of all the lunar eclipses over the past year and a half have hit Libra and Aries. Look, lunar and solar eclipses. Okay, so this is the last one that'll hit Libra. Thank God. So that'll give away a lot of this trade anxiety, but then Ketu will go into Virgo, which will make us more peculiar or more, it'll make us more careful about what we purchase. Let's put it that way. But Ketu's still in Libra for the time being. Lord of the seventh house is in the first house. A lot of focus on relationships, a lot of focus on gains. This is a good combination for wealth in the chart. The second lord's in the first house, ninth lord's in the first house, 11th lord's in the first house. But again, there'll be a temptation to spend a lot. Saturn's in the fifth, which is not a bad placement. It makes the sign very innovative, very determined to work with what it's got. And you also have Jupiter and Moon and Rahu in the seventh house. So every relationship partner looks good. Every person you look at and say, oh, I could make it with that person. It's just really a bizarre kind of or that person could be a potential partner. You know, and it's even true in business. Okay. So again, wait a few weeks before you really get involved with somebody. And as a matter of fact, because of Mars affliction in Libra right now, I would probably wait for a couple of months at least before I got involved with anybody relationship wise. For Scorpio, Scorpio has Lord of the First and the 12th, along with the other Lord of the First and the 12th. So that's Mars and Ketu. So there'll be heavy expenditure patterns this month. Sun and Mercury are in the 12th house. So there'll be a resistance to letting things happen. So this sign will feel like its hands are tied a great deal. And Saturn aspects this sign. So there'll be a lot of pressure on it to succeed. Saturn's aspecting Jupiter and Moon and Rahu in the sixth house. So enemies will be stymied just for the time being. Okay. Venus is in the 10th house. Relationship partners' career will tend to flourish with this combination. For Sagittarius, Sagittarius has Jupiter, Rahu, Moon in the fifth house. So there'll be a lot of problems with children, a lot of problems with creative activities, although this sign will find itself creatively very aggressive. And I think over the next few weeks, you'll start to see the sign become very, very creative and very disciplined. Saturn is in the third house, so some problems with younger siblings, some problems with children. And in terms of Venus being in the ninth house, this is actually a good placement. It will give luck from women. Sun, Mars, Mercury, and Ketu are in the 11th house, some gains of funds. For Capricorn, Capricorn has Saturn in the second, so a lot of focus on money, as you said before, and this will continue over the next few weeks. And Jupiter's in the fourth house, so again, not a bad combination except for that Rahu there. And Venus is in the seventh house. I'm sorry, Venus is in the eighth house, so this will make the sign seem very attractive to people. And Mars and Ketu and Sun and Mercury will bring success to this sign career-wise, but also with a certain amount of trickery, and you'll have to watch your back. For Aquarius, Aquarius has Jupiter and Moon in the third house. That's not a bad placement. Jupiter, Moon, Rahu in the third house, so it'll give a strong desire to write. It'll give a strong desire to communicate. Venus is in the seventh house, makes the sign rather attractive to um, other people. But with Saturn in the first, there's a lot of fear about repeating past mistakes in relationships. Mars is in the ninth house, along with Sun, Lord of the seventh house. So there's a fear of attracting somebody who's either temperamental or a bit of a liar into a person's life again. And uh, this sign should pay attention to that fear. Um, if you want somebody who's eccentric or a little bit weak-willed, that's fine. That's fine if that's what you want in life. Um, I'm not judging you if you want that, by the way. And Jupiter's aspecting Sun, Mars, Mercury, Ketu. So again, um, I'm just trying to think of a good way to put it. Big lies, to quote Father Ted, and I won't say the word which could be mistaken for something else. Big lies with bells on, so um, it's pretty interesting to watch these Mercury K2 Mars conjunctions because they're really um, you'll see people coming up with what I would call lies that people believe or that they want to believe. So I think this is fascinating. The only downside of it is, or the major downside, so it's entertaining if you're looking at it from a fiction perspective, but God almighty, it damages people's lives like crazy. But that being said, not a bad week for Aquarius. A lot of ego boost, especially because the sign is feeling like it has a lot of pressure on it, and a little bit strong desire in nature coming out, but being fought at pretty much every turn. Finally, Pisces. Finally, Pisces could be a song title. Finally, Pisces. Finally, Jupiter goes into the second house, so there's anxiety about money, which will transfer into Pisces. In general, there'll be anxiety about religion or spirituality or mystical movements over the next couple of years. And Jupiter is in the second house, so there'll be some realization of money goals this month. Venus is in the sixth. You're going to have to watch out for bad relationships with artists or women or creative people. And Sun, Mars, Mercury, again, not a good time for relationships for almost any sign in general, but especially not for Pisces. Saturn's in the 12th house. Um, Good for financial gains to a certain extent, but there's a tendency to hoard money with this combination. So, but again, I don't necessarily think that's such a bad idea given what's happening right now. Now let's go to the sky map. So a good time for ending things, but not necessarily a good time for beginning things until we get to roughly about 2 weeks from now. Okay. Okay, so let's look at our astral map and see where we can expect some issues. Okay, so we have a lot of line coming out of Arizona, California. Wow. West Coast in general. a lot of disruption in that part of the country, all the way over to, I have to get my goggles, all the way into Utah. Utah is such a nice state. Why do they deserve that? Um, and up through Canada, especially the western parts of Canada, Baja, California, and Mexico. And also, what we have here, this is fascinating to me. We have a Saturn line going up through Florida, to roughly where Nicaragua is, Florida, Cuba, Washington, close to Washington, D.C., and up through Canada. So obviously, we have the deadlock in that they haven't named a Speaker of the House. Um, they'll probably settle down to business, I would guess, after the eclipse has passed, and elect a speaker, but it's been a trial for a lot of people. And you have this Venus line over here. So there'll be worries about the economy, especially in the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Um, and and we know there's a lot of disruption going on down there, also up through Venezuela, down through Peru, and kind of touching on Chile, and maybe influencing Argentina. There's a Rahu line passing right through eastern Brazil, sort of close to Rio de Janeiro, not exactly right on it. And I think one of the things you can see is all in the mid-Atlantic. There are this is Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Rahu lines all coalescing. Now, it could be damaging to the Azores and the Canary Islands, and possibly to Brazil, and possibly to West Africa. So there'll be what I would call uprisings in West Africa, maybe even some violence in Brazil, some dissatisfaction. And if we go right through here, we see London. So I heard the bad economic news from the UK. I heard it on from Alexa, from the Alexa devices, and probably heading down into France and Spain and into, um, gosh darn it, I should know the name of that, and into Algeria and into down close to Gabon. Um, so, and we have a Venus line. So trade will be impacted within this area right here, roughly between uh, England and uh, I would say Eastern Europe, because these lines don't end. There'll be some panic in in Iran. Now, Israel, interestingly enough, there's not really any lines drawn over Israel right now. The closest line as you get is a Venus line, which is really going up through Greece and into Sweden and Eastern Europe. Okay, sort of Eastern Europe, Central Europe, and down through as far south as South Africa. Now, a lot of these republics, except for Nigeria, are in a certain amount of economic trouble. Okay, so I think one of the things to keep in mind is that this Venus line can represent exploitation by foreign powers, by different um, countries seeking wealth. China's been very active in Africa lately. There are still a lot of riches in these countries, so keep that in mind. Uh, but the Rahu line is troubling because it's going through close to the border of the Ukraine. It's going up through Iran, uh, close to Syria and Iraq. and down into Saudi Arabia and down into the countries on the south, like the Emirates and uh, Kuwait. So this looks like a trouble spot in the world all the way down to Madagascar. There'll be certain panic, there'll be certain upset. Government will be in trouble to a certain extent as well because of the Jupiter of the moon line over here and the Jupiter line as well. So Pakistan and Afghanistan, no real surprise there. They're still in trouble. Uh, so sometimes Jupiter lines are good, but they expand misery if they're being aspected by malevolent planets. So I mean that's the downside to Jupiter. So you can see some water problems, maybe some fires coming up through this part of the world. Um, and with, like I said, with Rahu, maybe some panic or there may be some, I hope there aren't any air attacks on Iran, but there'll certainly be some trouble from the skies in Iran. There's a Saturn line passing through Bangladesh and far western China, all the way down into close to Indonesia. And this could indicate some economic hardship. And finally, we have a Venus line going right through Vietnam and right through China. So this could indicate some problems with medical supplies, also with silicon chips and things like that from those countries. And also we have um, Borneo being hit by that line. And let's see now, what else we got? We have a Mars line, a descending Mars line passing through eastern Russia uh, to uh, get to New Guinea, uh, the Muslim half of New Guinea, actually, and to Australia. And there's a Mars line. I'm sorry, there's a Rahu line going through Australia, a Rahu sun. So again, there should be some embarrassment to the government in Australia and also some problems in the economy in Australia, especially the far eastern side of the country. New Zealand is untouched. So that's it for this week. More guests are coming up, I promise. I just want for these eclipses to pass and keep the faith. This is a good time to explore what you want in life. Eclipses are really good for contemplation, and they're also good for starting new plans or for formulating plans. They're not good for starting projects, but they're good for formulating plans. And so also really good for getting rid of things you just don't need. Okay. So keep the faith. I love you all. Please, if you would, subscribe, like, and share the video with your friends and even with people who you're only casually acquainted, because it means a great deal to me, and I hope it will continue to do this exercise, and we can expand to other topics, and I can actually do shorter videos. Okay? Thanks a lot, folks. See you next week. Stay safe. I love you all. Don't ever forget that. And I thank you all for watching. Peace and namaste.